Hi there, I'm David. I'm one of the gardeners here at Cheyenne Palace. Welcome to Cheyenne Palace Live, and today we're going to give you a tour of the kitchen garden. The kitchen garden is one of our biggest gardens, probably the biggest garden we have on site. And I do my best to grow all edibles and medicinal things that people would have eaten or used in the 18th century. In general, there's fruit trees around the walls and around the wooden fence, around the annual beds on the interior. Most of the annual stuff that's grown here, I started from seed myself and have brought it up through its ages. We'll take a quick walk around and see some interesting things. The outside wall fruit trees are generally pears and figs, but there's also some interesting little ones dappled around. We got a pomegranate over there in the corner, and a plum also over in the corner, a peach down the way, which maybe we'll see later. These annual beds are a little bit overgrown. We had our winter crops in, and we're trying to take them out and get them switched over to our summer annuals. Due to the current situation, however, it's going a little bit slower. The bees love these yellow flowers. These are all how all the brassica crops flower, so you could probably see some bees buzzing around in there. I'm hoping to get them out before they drop their seeds all over. One of the first interesting things we come to, people always ask if we can grow artichokes here. As you can see, we definitely can. I started these plants in the fall of 2018, and they've been in since then, and they're finally flowering now. We got some fava beans with the sticks over here and on the fence over there, and just behind you can see some garlic, 3 different varieties of garlic, over 180 cloves. That should be ready about June or so. One of the first trees we'll come to here is one of my favorite trees in the garden is a plum, and I had to protect it a little bit in the spring from a couple frosts, but you can see how many plums we're gonna be having. It's great to see fruit already on some plants, and then there's even some apple trees that haven't even woke up yet. While we're by the fava beans, let me see if I can find you some big ones here. It's amazing to watch, and they'll get bigger by the day. They grow so fast, and we got a lot of them. Moving down the row here, this was a complete winter crop, collards and Brussels sprouts and cabbages. A lot of them have come out, and you can see mainly what goes in after are some cover crops. What you see there is peas and oats. That helps raise the nitrogen in the soil and give some organic matter to the soil. So I don't need to fertilize. I just use plants to do it for me. Off in the distance, you can see some crimson clover that has some really nice flowers on them. That is my effort to rid that area of nutsedge, which is a weed around here. I did a little bit of orange oil spraying on it earlier, and then I planted that for the winter. Here's some leeks. These leeks are, I like to call them the biggest in the county. They're probably biggest in the half the state if you ask me. But when I first planted them, I buried them down in a ditch. So where you see them going into the ground, they still go a good 8 to 10 inches below that. Nice white, nice flavorful leeks. Just beyond them is our asparagus patch. You can see we still have some asparagus. The bigger, thicker ones are the ones you normally harvest. And then as they get skinnier and more fern-like, you leave those to help build the energy for next year's harvest. They come up pretty thick, pretty fast early in the spring. They're starting to slow down now. So as the year goes on, they'll become big, tall, ferny-looking things. More crops that will be coming out, the cilantro. Cilantro also here is definitely a winter crop. I call it the winter basil. Most people always say they don't have good luck with it, but that's because they try to grow it in the summer. I recommend if you have trouble with it, try to grow it in the winter. The one tree on the wooden fence right there is our only apricot tree, and it's an exception to the apple trees around. All of the flower buds, however, got frosted off in the late frost we had this year. Down this end, I've been doing some guerrilla planting this morning. I planted over 100 plants in my effort to try to fill it up for spring and for summer. I planted peppers and tomatoes and sunflowers and things like that. Over here, it's kind of hard to see, but this is my onion patch. Onions at the moment are kind of really thin green things, which kind of look like grass, but they're there. So hopefully in a few months or whatever, we'll have some nice big onions. And just up close here are some beets and some celery. Just back here is our strawberry patch. It's one of the perennials on the interior that I keep. They're kind of hard to keep year after year, but I'll replant them. I'll take some cut-ins in the winter to help fill them in the spring. In this blank patch you see over here, I planted 15 pounds of seed potatoes. So hopefully we'll have some potatoes here in a few months. Just beyond that is where I'm planning on putting corn. I'd like to weed it before I planted it, but we'll see how that goes. Some beautiful Swiss chard right here in front of us. Beautiful, vibrant colors. Continuing on over here is my blueberry patch. Blueberry and blackberry. I put some annuals in. You can see the bees enjoying some the brassica flowers, as I said earlier. Along the wooden fence just around this little block is all blackberries, thornless blackberries. We did a good crop of those. Those fruit on last year's growth. So what will happen is that as you see them waking up, those will flower, then they'll die. Cut them out and they'll put up all new growth for the year. And then just in front of them here is all these blueberry plants. You can see here we got some little blueberries starting to come out. These plants are only a year or two old, so they're a little bit small now, but already harvested, already fruiting for us. Just beyond here is what we call the compost pile. It's where the kitchen dumps all their scraps, but speaking of potatoes, you can see their potatoes are sprouting just from potato scraps they've put in here from whatever they've cooked in the kitchen. Around this little patch is some dwarf pomegranates. So all these little trees are all pomegranate trees that only get to be about 3 or 4 feet tall. Give some pomegranates that are quite smaller than normal pomegranates, a little bit more tart. Definitely still usable if you'd like to have pomegranate flavor in any sort of drinks or anything. Here's a relative of the artichoke we saw earlier. It's called a cardoon. In the 18th century, people would have eaten the ribs of this plant as opposed to the flower. Grows quite similar, flowers quite similar, but the flower isn't nearly as fleshy. So, yeah, they adapted to eat the ribs of it. Here's a little area where I did some of my planting this morning. You can see I have two rows of small tomatoes in there that I just put in. And then these are some peas that have been here since October, so it's still flowering, still fruiting. Delicious, delicious snow peas. Here's our first little herb. It's one of the only herbs that we have on the interior. This is fennel. Most of our herbs are on the exterior. You can see here is to become a nice moth later on. Here's another herb. This is a nice big rosemary plant. It's even flowering in there. Speaking of flowers, here's a fairly young pear tree we have on the outside. Got some nice flowers. It's a little bit of a later bloomer compared to the other ones we have, so it's nice to still see some flowers about. Down the other end of this pea line, we have yellow ones, and you can see the abundance of peas we get. Here's an interesting fruit tree called the serviceberry, Amelanchier canadensis. One of my, I wouldn't say favorite trees, but I like the tree a lot. It has nice white flowers, a little bit later to wake up, but the fruits are nearly like a blueberry, a little bit sweeter, never sour. So if you eat them a little bit too early, it wouldn't be sour, so it's kind of nice. This is a pear tree. You can see it looks a little bit overgrown. It's amazing how fast these fruit trees grow. This has only been awake for a month or two and I already need to prune it. People always ask if it's a lot of work keeping these trees like this. I wouldn't say a lot of work, it's quite easy. It's just a matter of pruning, so it's a little bit of a commitment. That's the main thing. And then finally we'll get to our peach tree, which you can still see some remnants of some flowers on it. Bright pink flowers. And if you look closely, you can see the beginnings of some peaches coming. To get the best peaches, I'll probably thin them a little bit, but we'll wait till we get some peaches on there before we start taking them off. Yeah, so that's the kitchen garden. It's a good view from down here.
We have one question.
Yeah.
what do you do with all the produce?
Unfortunately, it's a visual garden. We do grow most of it for visualization, so we don't do too much with it. The kitchen does use some of it. I might be able to tease a volunteer to take some to some places for donations and things like that, but in general, I usually let it stay out here, let people enjoy the look of it, and by that time it's usually a bit rotted, so it doesn't usually get used. A rotted cabbage can look pretty beautiful as long as you don't touch it. I've learned, at least. It's quite amazing how quick things change in here also. So if you see all these yellow flowers now, on a regular year, I guess I would say that all that would be changed out and we'd have all new crops, and in in 2 weeks, a lot of volunteers who've come back every other week are always amazed at the difference of stuff that maybe they've planted and have gotten so much bigger in the 2 weeks that they had been gone. So if you see stuff, it's always worth to come back. I'm usually always in here. Feel free to ask me questions, and I hope you enjoyed the tour.